Welcome. We are on video number 9 of our series, and we're helping you to build courage from chaos and live your best life. I'm Vanessa, and I'm here with Tom Campbell.
Hey, Vanessa.
Hi, Tom.
Let's do this thing on ego.
Okay, so I've heard you talk about the ego, and I love your definition of the ego. It makes it very clear and easy to understand. You say that ego is awareness in the service of fear.
Yes.
What is
That's the definition of ego. It's awareness in the service of fear. Ego is not just self-identity. You can also have awareness in the service of love and have self-identity there. But that part of you, that part of your awareness that is in the service of fear, trying to pretend the fear isn't there, trying to cover the fear up, trying to, be an arrogant bully because you feel inadequate, all of that, that's ego. So when you are self-centered, everything's about you. Everything, whatever happens in the world, it happened to you. That if you take things personally, then that's your ego in the service of fear. It's about me. I'm the center of my universe. So if you see horrible things on the internet and it makes you depressed, that's your ego. It's your awareness in the service of fear. You get frightened, and the reason you get frightened, that isn't really because you see ugly things. You get frightened because I live in this terrible world that's frightening. I don't deserve this. I don't want this. I don't want the world to be that way. I want the world I want the world to be kind and supportive and caring. So I'm upset that the world isn't the way I want it. See, that's all about you. Instead of accepting, well, the world is the way it is. Let's accept that and deal with it. So you can do that positively. But, the world isn't the way I want it. So unfair. Here I am, a young person just going out into the world, and the world sucks. It's so dysfunctional. Woe is me. So that's not good. That's awareness in the service of fear. So one of them, the awareness in the service of fear, creates dysfunction. People are unhappy. They've got buttons. They're angry. They're depressed. They're suicidal. The person that says, well, the world's like that, it's a mess, but I'm going to be part of the solution. I'm not going to be part of that mess. I'm not going to spread fear or be fearful or get depressed and go moaning and, oh, woe is me. I'm going to find out what I can do to fix this world and make it better. See, now they're part of the solution. So one of them has this big ego problem, this fear problem, this subconsciousness problem, and the other one doesn't. The other one starts looking for ways to improve things. Well, I can't fix anybody else. I can only fix myself. So I'll just start working on myself. That's the best contribution I can make to making this world a better place, is make me a better person. All right, let's get going.
And helping people along the way.
Right, and helping people along the way. So that is the difference between somebody who gets depressed and somebody who is living a happy life. Let's go get them. Okay, how am I going to do this?
Right.
You see, they're up, they're positive, they have energy, they're not feeling sorry for themselves.
So that's somebody, so awareness in the service of fear is ego. So that's your ego. When your ego is coming from a place, when you're coming from a place that's motivated by fear, you're acting out of your ego.
Right.
Okay, so then your ego is kind of like keeping this fear at bay and keeping it kind of just tucked away. And another identification or another definition of ego that I've heard is it's kind of this mind-made concept of yourself. It's like this image of yourself that you've created so that you don't have to face the fear.
Well, the image of yourself is probably not a good description because image. The only reason you have image is because you have fear.
Right.
Image and fear go together. Otherwise, you'd be just authentic.
So that's ego. That's
ego. Your self-image is basically ego. You have a self-image in comparison to others.
right.
Am I better than others, or am I worse than others?
Yeah, and that's all
Okay.
ego.
That's all ego. Comparisons are all about ego.
Okay.
Because if you just accept yourself as you are, you never compare yourself to anybody else because that's irrelevant. What anybody else is, what does that make you? Doesn't affect anything about you. You are who you are, no matter how anybody else is. So comparing yourself to somebody is an ego. It's a fear of not doing well in the comparison. The ego, the awareness in the service of fear, is trying to make us believe that we don't have the fear. The ego tries to get that fear, it's the rug that lies over top the fear so that you can't see it because it's been swept under the rug. That's the ego, is the rug. It's the process of denying the fear.
Okay.
It's the process of excusing the fear.
And
Oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm upset because the world is such an ugly place.
right.
There's nothing to do with me. It's this ugly world that bothers me, or that ugly, brother I had that beat me up, or parent, or whatever. It's this ugly world I live in. That's the problem.
So the ego is very much never taking ownership or responsibility.
Right.
And projecting and
Projecting,
is
making
external.
excuses, pretending things don't exist the way they are, pretending that you're a bully because you're just bigger and stronger and smarter than everybody else.
Or it could even go on the flip side too, right?
Yes, or the shrinking violet because you're not.
Enough to be able to speak up or share or contribute.
Who would care what I had to say?
Nobody cares about what I have to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody
Okay.
cares about
who
what
am
I have
I?
to
What
say.
do I? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So how do we get rid of it?
Well, we get rid of ego by getting rid of fear, and we get rid of beliefs by getting rid of fear. Beliefs are also generated by fear. Like if I make a speech or something, and people say, well, should I believe Tom's theory or not believe it? Well, the reason they feel like they have to either believe it or not believe it is that if it's important information and they don't believe it, oh no. If it's really right and they don't believe it, then they've lost. On the other hand, if it's all bogus and they do believe it, oh no. You see?
Yeah.
Either one is fearful. So
Right.
whichever one's the bigger fear, then they don't do the oh no, they do the other one.
And they usually follow the crowd. Well, most people do this, so I'll just do this too.
Yeah.
Right.
So they tend to follow the crowd because that justifies it. See, if the crowd does it, then it can't be but so bad. The crowd, because the crowd does it, justifies it for people. They no longer have to take responsibility for it. It's
Right.
not really their choice. They just went along, and if it turns out later that it was a bad choice, well, a whole lot of people made it, so it's understandable. You see, no responsibility is the thing. So Freud got it right that a self-awareness is fundamental and it's necessary, but you can have awareness of who you are based on awareness in the service of love. That's who I am. See, when we go back to Viktor Frankl, who was he? His idea was to get something better, to come up with a better theory that could help people deal with hard things and so on. So he comes up with logotherapy. So he was helping, he was learning, he was growing, even though he had this horrible experience.
He took that adversity and he used it as a gift to improve and to grow and to help so many others.
Yeah, and some people have an experience that isn't all that horrible at all, but they just interpret it as horrible.
Yes.
Like the person who didn't get the teddy bear. It wasn't a horrible experience. Maybe the mother ran out of money. Maybe she thought the older child was too old for teddy bears.
Yeah.
Whatever else. It wasn't a horrible experience. Once nobody did anything to that child, but they interpret it that way.
Based on their perception, based on their attitude, yeah.
My son, when he was just a toddler, barely able to stand up, so he'd take a few steps and fall over, at that stage of learning to walk. And we were at a friend's house, and they had a big dog, and the big dog was very friendly, And my son went off on his own, staggering around, and he fell over and he landed on his, landed, sat down, laid back on his back like this. And the dog was very friendly. The dog walked up, stood over and said, "Hey, kid, you got a problem?" Just a dog being curious and perfectly friendly. My son took a look at that dog and those great big teeth and that great big head and screamed for his life. Ah! A dog's going to eat me. Well, he couldn't speak, so he didn't say that, but that was his fear. So after that, he had a fear of big dogs. Little dogs, not so much, but big dogs just frightened him. But no dog had ever done anything to him that was a problem. But his interpretation of it at the time, because he was too young to put it in perspective, was a problem, and that was a fear then that stuck with him. So when he was 5, I got him a little puppy, and at first that puppy would claw at his leg, like that, because it wants attention. It comes up to something and, hold me, how little puppies are. He'd cry. Oh, it's getting me, it's after me, it's a dog, it's going to eat me. It's just only, only weighs half a pound, and it's only this big, and it's just a little tiny thing.
Right.
And here's this kid that's 35 or 40 pounds, and and this tiny little puppy, but he was still terrified of it. See, fear is irrational. Fear is not rational. So eventually, he and that puppy got to know each other, got to love each other, and he lost his fear of dogs, but he still had a little tightness if he was around a dog bigger than the dog that was his dog.
Right, okay. What do you have to say to people who say or think that we need fear because fear keeps us safe?
They don't understand fear.
Yeah.
They say fear keeps us safe. Well, we don't go out in the woods at night because we know there's bears in the woods. So that's because we're afraid. Fear keeps us safe.
Yeah. Or they say we don't put our hand on a hot stove because we're afraid that it's going to burn us. So
No, that's ridiculous. The reason you don't go out in the woods at night when there's grizzly bears in mating season or whatever in territorial, and the reason you don't put your hand on a hot stove is because you're not stupid.
It's because you're smart. Yes.
It's because you have intelligence.
Yes.
That's why you don't do those things. It's not fear that keeps you from doing those. It's just basic intelligence keeps you from doing those. So the thing is that if you are out in the woods, and you have to go out in the woods because for some reason you have to go out there, or maybe you're out there and I don't know, it gets dark and you don't have enough time to get home before it gets dark or something. If you have to go out in the woods, then if you're frightened, you're much more likely to have trouble with the bears than if you're not. Because animals can smell fear a half a mile away. Yeah. And when they smell fear, that's easy prey. They'll come right to you.
Yeah.
If you're not frightened, well, you're just another animal in the woods. And you're not marked out as prey. So fear will get you. Fear makes everything worse. There isn't anything that's improved by fear.
Yeah, it's just the opposite, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't put my hand because I'm afraid. No, you don't put your hand because you're not stupid.
Because you're smart, yeah.
That's why you don't put your hand on a thing. It's not fear of the burn. It's that that's not a smart thing to do.
In fact, it's just the opposite, because when you're fearful of something, you actually should lean into that and overcome it, not stay away from it, right? Like, if you have a fear, we need to face that fear. It's not that we have a fear and so we need to now prevent ourselves from going into that thing.
Yeah, that's true. You should work with fears to get rid of them.
Yeah.
So yes, you can tell your toddler, don't touch the stove. You'll get burnt. And if your toddler values your opinion, they'll do that. Not because you frightened them, but because you've given them information that they can use.
Right.
And they may be, will someday not pay attention to that, and they will get burnt. Hopefully not too badly, maybe with a candle or something like that.
And then they learn.
Then they'll learn.
Yeah, that's how.
And it's not that fear is going to help them. The fear doesn't help them.
No.
Actually, if you have fear of something, it will hurt a whole lot more than if you don't.
Right, yeah.
You go to the dentist and you're terrified about it's going to hurt so much. He just touches you and you scream because you're so wound up with how bad it's going to be.
Yeah, you're so tense and sensitive.
Whereas if you just forget about it and say, well, dentist drills sometimes hurt, but it's not that bad. I can get through it.
Yeah.
Then they do it and it's not so bad. You kind of remove yourself from it and they do what they do. It's over and you're done and you go home. It's not that horrible an experience. Okay, it hurts a little bit, but it's just not that bad.
Exactly.
But if you're fearful, my littlest daughter, Danielle, she was always very sensitive about taking a splinter out. You know, I'd have to she'd get a splinter and I'd have to go get my magnifying goggles and my tweezers and maybe a pin or something that I could coax the splinter out. And she'd be so worked up over how much it was going to hurt that I just kind of touch her hand.
Yeah.
She'd scream, you know, and then I'd get the needle and it almost touched her.
Right.
So I said, close your eyes,
Yeah.
look away. Don't even look. She'd look, don't do it. It was just her own fear. It wasn't that bad. Yeah, it probably did prick a little and hurt just a little, but it wasn't so bad. But her fear
Made it worse.
so much worse. So here you are and you're out in the woods and it's late and you see a bear. What do? Well, if you're fearful, you'll probably freeze and then run. Worst thing you could possibly do.
Exactly.
You stink like prey, you're frightened, and then you run, and the prey instinct to chase comes on and you're dead meat.
Yeah.
The fear is going to kill you. If you're smart and you have to go in the woods, now you take your air horn, your pepper spray, whatever it is, and you know, should you look them in the eye or should you look down? You know, you've read something about bears and how to deal with them, what antagonizes them and what, you know, makes them go away. So you're prepared and you know how to deal with them. And you don't run because that's a sure way to make them chase you. And when they catch you, it won't be a pretty sight.
Right.
They catch you with their jaws. So it's the lack of fear is what keeps you safe.
Yeah.
There's never any excuse why fear is a good thing.
Yeah.
It helps us out.
It's never a good thing.
It's much better to educate and to give people information. So, all right, we keep our daughters out of trouble by frightening them about all the horrible things can happen to them. So they're really afraid to go out in the world. Somebody's going to grab them, and they have all of this fear about it. It'd be much better just to explain to them the way the world is, such that they have some understanding of what's risky and what's not. That way they can still have a life and still remain safe because they know enough not to put themselves in places and situations that are likely to end up badly.
Right.
Because they understand what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. So fear is never a good thing. It doesn't help us. What's good is the lack of fear and the intelligence. That's what helps us. If anything, fear, the only thing that fear might be good for is that it shows us where we still have work to do. It shows us what we need to work on.
Yeah. Well, one more comment about fear, and since we just did ego the last time, fear is difficult to see. If we say, well, what are my fears? You won't know because your ego's been so good at covering them up. You'll have no idea what your fears are. And if you say, what are my beliefs? Same thing. You'll have no idea what your beliefs are because some of them you just get out of your culture. They're just beliefs or things, you know, the reason, just because you believe it, you think they're facts. You've always believed it. You've grown up believing it, you know, like materialism.
Right.
Almost everybody in our culture is a materialist because they believe it, because it's just, they pull it
That's the culture.
out of the air. That's the culture. You know, so it's not that somebody said, okay, materialism 101, we're going to teach you how to, you know, why you should be materialist. You know, nobody takes that course. It's just believe it because it's there.
Yeah.
So beliefs are hard to find. Fear is hard to find. Ego is very easy to find. So if you want to find fear, find ego, and every piece of ego is attached to a fear because the reason you have ego is fear. right? It's awareness in the service of fear. So every ego will lead you to a fear. How do you find ego? You find ego by looking for a negative feeling. So if in your life you ever feel stressed, annoyed, angry, upset, you feel unappreciated, wronged, all this stuff. If it's a negative feeling, not just a factual feeling, but a negative feeling, like, oh no, that's awful, this shouldn't happen to me. If it's a negative feeling, then that's ego. Like being a victim. Okay, now we'd say a victim is, nobody should be a victim, that a victim is powerless. And somebody said, yeah, but there are victims. People are victims. Yes, like Frankel, he was a victim of the Nazi war against Jews. He was a victim. But there's a difference between being a victim and accepting your victimhood.
Taking that identity on.
Identifying yourself as a victim, or being a victim and saying, well, I too shall endure this the best I can. I'll do what I can with it. I'll learn from it. I won't give in to it. And there's a difference. So, yes, there are victims. We're all victims of something, right? We're victims of a stock market that goes bad on us. We're the victims of
materialism. We're victims of
We're the victims of fear. We're the victims of all sorts of things, right? So yes, we're all victims. That's not the point.
Yeah.
And some people, I'm sure, will say, well, I'm a bigger victim than you are. Yes. But being a victim is not the problem. Identifying yourself as a victim is the problem.
Yes.
If you don't identify yourself as a victim, then it's just something to be endured. It's something to change. It's something to outgrow. It's a challenge. If you identify as a victim, then it's self-centered. Oh, woe is me. It's so unfair. Why me? I deserve better. See? It's all about self.
Right.
So being a victim, identifying as a victim, is a problem, a real big problem. Being a victim, well, that sometimes happens to all of us. You're driving your car and somebody runs into you. Bang.
Yeah.
Well, now your car's all messed up. You can see yourself. Well, you're a victim of a bad driver, or victim of road rage, or victim of your own inattention. I mean, you can express anything in your life in terms of victimhood if you are self-centered enough.
Right.
But that's not the way to look at your life. You got to identify yourself not as a victim, but as a person with power to change. A person that can take any event and turn it into growth. If you identify yourself like that, then you turn it to be Viktor Frankl.
Yeah,
you don't get the PTSD.
Right.
You don't, you don't end up feeling bad about yourself 50 years later because you didn't get the teddy bear. You just don't see yourself as a failure. You see yourself as I can overcome, not I'm dysfunctional or I'm not. So it's just an attitude. See, just what you said. The difference between really, really succeeding and just falling in a hole is just an attitude. It's just a perspective. Just change that perspective from I'm a victim to I'm going to learn something from this.
Yeah, it really is that
persevere.
simple. It's that simple. It's as simple or as complicated as we make it, right?
Yeah.
And then it's through habit and repetition that we keep making that choice over and over again.
So if your life is full of anger and stress and unhappiness and disappointment and you don't feel fulfilled, then you are full of fear. And you take each one of those, like take anger, something that makes you angry. When the last time you were angry, or the next time you're angry, say, oh, what fear creates that angry button? What fear is tied to the thing that makes me angry? Somebody belittles you or tells you that you're not good enough. Well, if inside you feel you're good enough, you feel fine, then you think, well, it's their problem. If inside you feel not good enough, now you're angry because they've triggered your fear. Your fear of not being good enough is triggered when somebody says, you're not good enough. What do you mean I'm not good enough? I am too good enough. You're not good enough. You know, and we get into a fight, right?
Right.
So that's because you actually have a fear of not being good enough. You have a
Right.
fear of being inadequate.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that fear, then other people, you have no buttons.
Yeah.
Other people can't do that. So for every button you have and every negative thing you feel, there is a fear underlying there, or you wouldn't have that negative thing. You'd
Yes.
say, oh, you think I'm not good enough? Oh, that's interesting. Why would you think that? And you're smiling, and you obviously would like to know. You'd like them to tell you. And they may get in a rage and tell you stuff, and you say, well, that's interesting, but you know, all those things you said, they're not true. You know, and here's why, and here's why, and here's why, and here's why, and they're still in a rage. You say, well, it looks like it's not a good time to talk with you. Maybe I'll see you some other time. Bye, have a nice day.
Right.
And you actually do that, not out of snideness and not out of I'm superior, but just out of, you don't own any of that crap that they sent. But you own it if you feel like it's true or could be true. I am inadequate or whatever, and then they tell you, and now you get angry because you have to deny it.
Yeah.
So that's the key. It's just a matter of how you see something. That attitude, that perspective you take makes all the difference in the world, whether you're a Viktor Frankl and come out with a new logotherapy,
Yeah.
or whether you're some poor victim that spends the rest of their life hiding in a closet, afraid to go outside, crying all the time, and totally miserable because you went through this horrible experience.
And that's the thing is, I know we're making it sound very simple, but it does. It has to come from this being level, right? It's not just something you think at the intellect.
And there'll be other people who will say, well, now you're demonizing the victims, the poor victims who are upset and miserable and unhappy because they're victims. And now you're saying that, well, if they didn't own it, they wouldn't be the victim. It's all their fault. No, it's not about fault.
Yeah.
It's just the way we are. And everybody does the best they can with what they've got. And if you happen to have enough quality that you don't do fear, then you will go through life no matter what happens to you, and life will be good, and you will be happy. You'll live in joy, you'll live in peace, and you'll feel satisfied because you don't have that fear. So no matter what happens to you, you can deal with it, and you'll get past it. You'll go on. You might be unhappy, you might be sad for a while, but you get over it.
Yeah,
you know, it's
do.
okay.
Yeah.
But whereas you're fearful, even the tiniest thing that happens to you, like you don't get a teddy bear, can put a scar on you for life.
Yeah.
And you don't get over it. And you cry about it, and you're upset about it, and it ruins your life, and it ruins your relationships, and it's a wall you can't get through, and you got all the struggle, and you feel unhappy, you feel stressed, you feel unappreciated, you feel nobody understands me, you know, you feel anger,
Yeah.
you feel all this stuff,
Yeah.
and it's all because you've got that fear.
Right. And so you're saying then the way to get rid of ego and get rid of fear, well, the way to get rid of fear is by using the ego.
Using the ego to tell you where your fears are.
Right.
Because every time you catch yourself with a negative feeling, well, look at those people. They shouldn't be doing that. That's a negative feeling.
I can't believe she called me that.
Yeah, those are all negative feelings.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you have a negative feeling, there's a fear that's behind that negative feeling.
Right.
And that fear will keep you unhappy. It'll make you struggle and keep you unhappy. You get rid of that fear, then that's just one big load off your shoulders, and you can be a happier person.
So you find the fear, and then the way to get rid of that fear is by having the intent to...
You need a really honest, strong intent that I don't want to be that way. It's not about behavior. It's about being. I don't want to be that way. And if you strongly feel that and keep that intent with you, you will do all the right things to get rid of it.
And it helps to have that intent when you have a bigger picture and you understand that your purpose here is precisely that, to get rid of the fear and become love.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tom.
You're welcome, Vanessa.
Yeah.
So we've had some fun. We've made some videos, and I hope your friends out there in video land will enjoy the videos and give them something to think about. But please, folks, don't believe it. Don't disbelieve it. Find out for yourself.
That's right.